Hello and good day, everybody. Here we are again, live. Welcome to Holy Men with Crash Bell. I'm sorry, excuse me. Start over. Welcome to Holy Men with Mastermind Connect. We are here today to finish out our series. And if you have been a part of this series, then you know that we have been progressing on the things that we have been talking about. Now, today we're going to get into a little bit of a deeper conversation and a little bit of the inner portions of yourself based on wisdom. But let's just kind of recap really quick, right? We've had a lot of different sessions that we've had, just to recap the whole series we've had before. On series 1, we talked a lot about the things that we've been taught about manhood and redefining those things. And then from there, we had to really understand that our body and our divine self and the balance that we have within ourselves, it really plays an important role on how we see the world. And it's important for us to understand that our left and right side of our brain carry a masculine and feminine perception. And then where do we go after that? After that, we went into the mind and we talked about how your body has 3 brains. Yes, I'm going to say that again. Your body has 3 brains. You have the head brain, neocortex. You have the gut brain, enteric nervous system. And then you have the heart brain, the intrinsic cardiac nervous system. Now, from there, we dove right into the concepts of what it means to not only connect with your body, but then to understand your emotions. And your emotions are a vital part of your experience, obviously, right? But it's actually the reaction that you have from the emotion that has the cause and effect, not the emotion itself. So we dove into that last week with Oshim and Ivo. And this week, we're going to continue kind of on that by tuning into your emotions, you start to understand the process of that inner wisdom. Now, that inner wisdom is the key thing that we're going to talk about today. Now, as far as inner wisdom goes, I just wanted to preference in this session today, I want all of you to just tune into how you sense and tune into how you feel, because this is going to actually show up today, right? I want you guys to be in tune with your emotions, the emotions that you have from last week, which was really traumatic for a lot of us. And then the emotions that you possibly carried into the weekend and then into this week. So I want you to be mindful of that. And I want you to actually just pay attention as we go through this session. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and start this dialogue. Let's go ahead and start this conversation. Now, I have 2 brothers who are going to be joining us today. And once again, every man that I have on this show has either influenced me or inspired me in a way where I've either kind of like peeked in their back end and see what they're doing, or we've had connections and talks. So the first brother that I'm going to bring on, Pervis Taylor. Pervis is not only, this guy lights up the room whenever he comes into the room. And not only does he light it up, but he's super smart. And he's a doctor, and that's amazing. But mostly, he's a human. And in his human self, that's where we connected. I connected with Pervis on a panel that we did way back for a bunch of kids. And in that scenario, we connected. And it was like not even for a lot of time, right? But we had such a relationship in that moment and a feeling and an energetic brotherhood that it was just like instant, like, yo, this is my man. Like, I love this man. And from there, as all relationships build, you build it. So welcome, Pervis. How you doing today, brother? That green is looking real dope on you, by the way.
Oh my God, bro. Like, I gotta send you a cash app. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you so much for that. I'm so honored to be here and just be a human being, not be, Pervis the life coach, just be Pervis. So yeah. I'm excited for this conversation.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm glad to have you here. And you are going to bring a lot to the stage, I already know. And the second brother is someone that actually we met through passing, and we met through basically almost through social media and just having the same type of energy. A lot of the things that I do, he also does. And so from that connection, we actually made it a actual in-person connection. He attended an event that we had going on. And from that moment, again, once we saw each other in person, it was like, yo, this is my brother, man. This is all love. Like, this dude right here is awesome. Not only do all of us, for one, dress super fly. Let me just put that out there. But, he keeps it 100 when it comes to fashion. But my man Jose Alejandro, he is, man, this guy does a lot of things that will definitely inspire you. And he has an energy about him that also just offers empathy. That was the one thing that I noticed about him whenever I first interacted. Like he had just this presence of empathy and love coming off him. And I was like, yo, this man is really about his work. And so I had to have him on the show because not only does he have a lot of insight, but he's an amazing person to know and talk to. So, Jose, what's up, brother? How you feeling?
Hey, brothers. I'm really full of gratitude and excitement for this conversation. Really humbled to be here and share the stage with you guys, remarkable men, and excited to tap into some inner wisdom and gain some inner wisdom from each one of you as well.
And that is literally the point, right? So I'm not even going to waste too much time, but I will preference for everyone who has joined us today. I see that we already have some people in the group. Hello, all of you that are here present. I would like to say that if anything that we say triggers or inspires or brings up anything for you, leave it in the comments, leave it in the chat. If you have any questions for us, by all means, please do ask, because we will be discussing some pretty intimate things about our lives. I mean, as intimate as we may get, but we're going to go ahead and discuss some things that may bring up something in you. And that's kind of the point for us to relate to each other. So use the chat to be a part of the conversation as well. Now, I wanted to just start by saying last week, fellas, we really talked about emotions, and we really talked about how emotions in your body are made to be alchemized, because that's kind of one of the bottom line energies of this is we are looking to be the alchemist. Mm-hmm. Now, I explained that in a much greater sense last week because we were talking about how our bodies are made up of over 80 chemicals. You know, we got iron, nitrogen, phosphorus, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and so many more. I mean, I can go on literally for a while naming them all. But we talked about how our emotions are what puts these chemicals together to make molecules to give us this sensation of feeling. And how whenever we tune into our feelings, we actually empower ourselves, because not only are we becoming the alchemist by transmuting those feelings, especially toxic ones, but we also will really be able to put it into perspective of why it's important to actually use our emotions. Now, I just want to get you guys' quick feedback, because I think that that was such a huge thing last week. I'm curious to know, how have you found your emotional intelligence to be something that actually helped you in these days?
Oh, I guess I'll go first.
Whoever wants to go.
I guess for me, I've always known, just even like in my profession, but just, you know, in real life, that I have to be able to experience my emotions. Because if I don't, then they become suppressed, and then I start to transact with it, you know? So like for me, it's like, I always tell people, and I say this to myself, is like, if I'm feeling something, I need to sit in it and let it have its way. But I just don't make any decisions based off of it. As you said, and I react, I kind of respond to it, and I'll talk it out, but I'll sit through it and experience it, because for me, the emotion earmarks my humanity. It earmarks that I'm a human being. You know what I mean? It earmarks where I am on the journey. So for me, during this time, it's like I've always been emotional, and I've always been in tune with my emotions. And thankfully, I came from a family who let me be that person. So for me, it's never been hard for me to really sit in emotions. Now, I am protective about who I am emotional around. But yeah, no, like I've been feeling a lot of things, and I think that they're all great, because now they inform you. They're informing me of something. So like, to do a deeper dive.
Yeah. And I think what you said is great, because that even knowing when to guard your emotions is a form of emotional intelligence. I'll throw it over to you, Jose.
Yeah, sometimes you definitely have to wear a mask. I think in this space, so we always talk about removing the mask, but with emotional intelligence in my journey, I've realized that sometimes there's some masks that need to be worn, and that allows me to go into depth with guys like yourselves. You know, it allows me to go through layers of vulnerability. That sometimes if I remove the mask completely, it might scare somebody away, and it might not allow the opportunity to really go to those depths. In terms of the question, Pervis, I love your response. And I feel like for most of my life, I've felt a lot of emotions, and I've been an empath. I could feel things that my parents. There's a lot of turmoil in my household, so that was something I always had this almost like innate instinct that something was going to pop off, and the fear was there, but I never really understood where it was coming from. And to me, emotional intelligence really shifted how I used to react and into an opportunity to respond. Like I still feel the feelings. Like I feel, I felt nervous coming in here. I'm like, damn, I don't know, like if I'm gonna say what I need to say, and is my truth gonna come out? And before I used to react to like, no, forget it, I'm not doing it.
But Jose, I'm gonna say to you, bro, like the nerves mean that you care.
Exactly. And I'm very aware of them, and I do spaces like this often. But even if it was like my teacher calling on me, it was like, oh no. And and now I'm able to say, kind of just like you said, sit with myself and really just slow myself down and take a breath and say, oh well, I know why I'm scared. It makes sense. I'm speaking to some new just people watching, and they might judge me. That might be the worst case, but also I know my truth, and let me just sit with this and transmute it into some excitement, and then before I know it, I forget. I'm like, oh shit, I didn't even remember I was nervous. I'm just talking to the homeless. That's it.
But you know what you said though. I love that you're like being introspective, and I think that's one of the things I so appreciate is that I take a pause to like really sit with myself and ask myself questions out of curiosity. Like, why are you so mad? Like, why did you react that way? Like, whatever the situation is, I just think it's so important I know it's important for me, and I think it's important for men in general to just, take a pause, be introspective, ask yourself questions out of curiosity rather than judgment,
I love that.
Yeah. And that's actually a perfect segue, because for me, I always thought, based on my experience as a kid and my experiences listening to myself, that everyone had their own inner guru, right? Or their own inner wisdom is like what this topic is about. Now, I truly believe that every person has their own inner guru or wisdom, because it is your own self. It is just a different portion of yourself that you may have not connected with yet. So just because someone may have not connected with it, and that goes for all of you out there listening, there's always time and there's always choice. So learning how to connect with your inner guru is not necessarily it's not really difficult. It's just about like what these gentlemen both said: sitting with yourself and then introspecting and just like listening and questioning, like, what is it that I'm going through? What is it that's bothering me? What is it that threw me that way? Why did I react this way? What is it? And then listening to yourself to get that answer, versus like what Jose was saying, reacting like, oh, I know what it is, or oh, I'm just going to react to it, and then create a habit that's toxic actually from that reaction. But I'm actually, guys, tell me, when was the first time that you recognized that you had inner wisdom? I'm just curious. Whoever wants to go. Or so your inner guide. How about that? Your inner guide. Let's use that phrase instead.
So my father died when I was 24. He died of a heroin overdose. And at that time I was, working at Def Jam, and I was signing up Wilhelmina models. And, in my mind, I thought my career was taking off. Things were happening well. Then I just when he died, it was delayed because I didn't deal with it the way that I should have. I was kind of like being strong, so I didn't really cry like that, So like I flew home to Texas, I handled it, came back, and just living my life, right? But what happens is, like I tell people, if you don't transmute it, you're gonna transact with it. You're gonna transmit it and you transact with it, right? And so what ended up happening is I ended up having like a nervous breakdown. And I remember the place I was living at the time. I remember, laying prostrate on the floor, and I remember like praying to God, just asking like, just get me through this. Just praying, just get me through this, because at that time, a flood of things that I suppressed came up, like being molested, being bullied, like so many things that I just completely forgot about, because I left Texas and I'm like living in New York. Texas don't exist, doesn't exist. And so in that space, I felt like God said you got everything you need to make it through it. And when once I took ownership of that and I owned it, I felt more empowered, because I think I was so tired of like feeling like a victim. And you know what I mean? Because this
Sick and tired, man.
victimization, yeah, victimization can be very comforting.
Sure
Right?
can.
It can be very comforting. And so for me, I just wanted more for my life. And I knew that my father,
Yeah,
actually, one of the things that he said to me before he died, actually, like one of our last good conversations, was like doing the work that I do today. He prophesied I'd be doing the work that I'm doing today. And so in that time, I said I had to find one thing to be grateful for. I had to find one thing to be grateful for. And I found the gratitude in, I was always a person that people came to for advice, or people came to be a sounding board. And so that moment, it transformed me and literally turned me into the person I am, because I recognized that I had something, even when I was bullied, even when I was abused, all those things, like something inside of me said, keep going, keep going, keep going. It's going to get better. Right. And I made it through all those things. And I started to look back and I said, yo, you made it through all those things that you didn't think you was going to make it through. I told myself, you're going to make it through this. I never dealt with death before, at least that close to me, you know?
Yeah.
And so like that moment literally began the journey to becoming the purpose that people know today. And it was in that moment of laying prostrate, crying to God, crying, just wanting to find something, and just realizing that I had strength and the resilience, and I had the tenacity and the perseverance, because I made it through all those things, right? I was like, I know I'm gonna make it through with whatever's next. So I don't know if I answered the question correctly, but I feel like, but yeah, that was the moment. That was the moment I recognized, like, I don't want to be a victim. So,
well, I want to further go into that, because I'm curious to know, because I'll give a story in a little bit, but in that moment, like, let's say you had all those emotions, you were purging all that stuff. In that moment that you had a little bit of clarity and a little bit of peace or understanding, like, can you remember, or can you tell me in your own words what that felt like in your physical body?
it felt like a lifting. It felt like a lifting, because I was depressed, because, you know, depression weighs in your body. Like, I remember I couldn't, like, walking was laborious. You know what I mean? Like, everything was laborious. And so I remember, like, that night of laying on the floor, praying and all that stuff, the next day, because I feel like I purged so much. Like, I literally, that floor was mopped, because all the tears,
Awesome.
that I was crying. And I remember waking up the next day, having great sleep, number one.
Yeah.
And because it was like a journey, it was a journey, but it felt lighter for me.
That's amazing.
Because, you know, depression is very heavy. It's very heavy. When you have like, and it was appropriate, right? My father just died, you know what I mean? Like, and also not dealing with issues, so it was appropriate. But it was so heavy. And so I think once I started to like share and talk about it and have that moment of clarity, that led me to share, right? Because only what you confess can be healed. And so once I started to talk about it, I was just lighter.
That's awesome. Now, Jose, I'll repeat the question, because, you know, sometimes we be forgetting what the questions are. But in your own words, I want to just get an understanding of when you may have felt that own inner guide in your body or in your consciousness.
You know, I have to sit with the question again, because one thing I've learned, and it's been a big piece to me, hearing and understanding my inner guide. In the men's spaces that I've been in, we say this phrase, like, listen to another man speak as if it was your firstborn child saying his first words. Right? And a part of me wanted to think about, oh, what am I going to say? But I was really just caught and resonating with Pervis's experience and everything you shared. So I really appreciate that. And now that I'm sitting with it, what I'm thinking about is, you inspired something when you said the word purge, because I had thought about you know how Omar, you said we always have our inner guide. We don't always have access to it. And I felt in my life that the reason I didn't really have access to it was because I had to pour some stuff out of my body, my emotions. I had to like let go of some of that in order to have more clarity of my inner guide. And it all started with journaling. My parents got divorced when I was 5. They got back together and divorced again about 4.5 years ago, and that created a catalyst for a lot of like inner child wounds that started coming up again, and I didn't understand. And at that point, I was still kind of resistant towards seeing a therapist or talking to someone about it. So I was like, let me try journaling. And I remember it was almost there was this session I got into. I just kept writing and writing. I didn't even know what I was writing. It was just like coming through. And I remember after I read it, I was just like, this thing clicked. It was like, oh wow, there's like something deeper to me that I wasn't even aware of. And I've caught glimpses. When you like something tells you not to put your phone there, you feel it, and then an hour later the phone falls, it cracks, and you're like, man, something told me not. Like it's that feeling where I knew something was always there, but I didn't want to listen to it. And just by pouring out, and then after that, most of my journey in connecting with my inner guide has been through sitting in stillness. I mean, the most profound opportunity I got to do that was literally last July. I did a rite of passage, and it was 4 days water fasting in Death Valley with nothing but pen, paper, and my hammock. And it drove me crazy. Within 24 hours, just like, man, there's still another 3 days to do this. And little by little, I just kept peeling back, just journaling things away. And I got this immense, like, up close and personal with my inner guide. It was just like the most clarity I've ever gotten. But it's always been from a process of navigating through the pain. Like Pervis, you said, you had to go through that pain. That allowed you to like let go of some things that maybe didn't have anything to do with your father. Some of it was, but there's probably some other pain in there that came along with that. And
Absolutely.
putting myself in those situations where I can purge all that pain, all that just trauma, and then, oh, there he is. And then it gives me this almost like this touch point where a couple breaths allows me to connect back to it. But journaling was definitely that place where I felt that like that just clarity, that there was something there that was deeper than the stories that my mind was telling me.
Yeah, and the second question I'll also offer to you, can you put in your own words how that literally felt in your physical body, like after transition?
It just feels grounding, and I don't know if that's a feeling, but it feels like
It's definitely
I feel grounded. Grounded. Yeah, it helps me feel grounded. Like there's the inner knowing that there just is me and nothing else really. The other emotions aren't permanent. Really is
Facts.
what comes up for me. Yeah.
Facts. Man, I love that you guys both mentioned the childhood wound and the childhood experiences, because that, as we all have issues or trauma or setbacks that come from our childhood. There was a lot of things that you guys said that actually reflected some of the other sessions. Brandon Slaughter had said, a lot of times whenever you find that divine essence, it's in like hindsight, it's something that already happened, and you look back and you be like, yo, that was a divine moment. And I've actually had moments in childhood when I was really young, man. I used to have these moments where it's almost like my consciousness it shrank inside of myself while also expanding outside of myself. And suddenly I had this sense of tingly vibrations and chills all through my body. And the first time I ever experienced this, I was fairly young. And it was it was weird. I'll be honest, it was weird, only because this is nothing I ever experienced before. But it wasn't weird in a way that was like negative, because most people say, well, that's weird, so it's negative. It was weird in a way that it was new and unfamiliar, but it was also like serene and peaceful. And so I'll try to give it in my best example of how I can explain it. It almost felt like I had cool water underneath my skin. Like there was like a mist of coolness that's running through my body. And I heard someone shout my name so loud. It sounded like that shit came from like 3 miles away, but it was the quietest voice ever. Like, and every time I still hear this voice today, it literally is like so quiet. It's like, I can't even do it, like, because it's like a shout, but like super quiet. And then I was walking down the street with my sister, and in one instant, suddenly, like the grass got greener, the sky was more blue. I had this sense of timelessness where suddenly I was in a space of emptiness, and I was just sitting here with my sister. I was feeling the wind, and then suddenly someone calls my name, and I actually turned around. I was like, "Yes." My sister was like, "Who are you talking to?" And I'm like, "You didn't hear that?" She's like, "No, you tripping. Let's go." And it was literally in that instant, right? But for me, it felt like 20 minutes. Like it felt like such a moment in time to where that had stayed with me throughout my life. That then started to question, like, yo, what the hell was that? Like, all those times, like we go back to our childhood, I would be in this traumatic situation, but it will bring me back sometimes to those moments where I was like, yo, but there's something else, right? There's something bigger. There's something more. And so I had to then understand that that was my inner system. That was my inner guide. And the thing that you said earlier, Pervis, was knowing that God had your back and God was okay. A lot of times using the phrase God sometimes throws people off because they have this negative connotation about what God is. And so I like to say source energy, or the thing that created the whole universe. Nobody's going to argue that. Nobody's going to say like, oh yeah, that thing ain't real. Shut the hell up. You're in it. Like, what are you talking about? It ain't real. You're literally standing in it right now. And so.
And then no one can ever deny each other's experience either. With that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I think that's a very important point. And so the word itself has a lot of connotation on it, but at the end of the day, your connection to that source is how you can get into the connection of that inner guide, because they're working together. You and it are kind of the same. And so one of the things that I'm really want to bring up, because we have talked a little bit about the ego within this session, but we didn't really speak about it in these terms. Now, we were talking about it with JD and Carlos in the last 2 sessions ago. And one of the things that came up, and the reason that I asked this question or brought this up for us today, was because, like, whenever it comes down to it, fear has a huge grip on our reality and our perception, right? And so everything that we see and perceive is all based on fear. And I had to really dialogue that with myself and be like, well, like, is it though? Because, we do live in love, right? We are in love. We're embodying love. But it was more about the things that we've been taught and the perception of this fear. And that's all ego-based, right? Because whenever we're in that moment of divine and healing, there's no fear. There's no essence of like trauma. I mean, you may have a memory, but the feeling and the essence is like, whew, I've come through. I've gotten through. I can trust. I can love. Whole crap. And then you have this whole new embodiment about yourself. And so I'm curious, some people can call on their inner guide or their spirit. Now, what do you guys think about this idea of calling on your inner guide and your inner spirit? Like we just touched on it. And how would you say that your ego sometimes gets in the way on calling on that inner guide? Yeah, man.
Well, first, I'd like to say that the ego never goes away. I've realized through my journey that it knows how to disguise itself. Even after I've found my, I found my purpose. I've done all this work, and there's still a whole other journey. My ego tends to somehow slip in there and figure out a way to show itself. And one question I always ask myself is, what is my selfish desire for this specifically in anything that I do? And that allows me to just get into that my ego. Let's see what it is that my ego wants. Bring it on the table.
Yeah.
And then I can look at it. I can look at it straight in the face and say, okay, well, how can I leverage my ego right now and bring it on as a friend, but not let him take over the steering wheel. Yeah. And that usually just allows me to have more clarity throughout, because there's times where I've denied it and I'm like, my ego is not going to get in this. And sometimes I believe that saying that is the ego itself saying that it's not going to.
Yeah.
And then it just comes back and sabotages. It's like you're sailing a boat and you say the ego's not coming on board, but he's under the ship just making a hole, and you don't realize till you're mid-sea. Instead, it's like, hey, I'm gonna bring you in here. Tell me what you want, and I'll make sure that you're along for the ride. But you're gonna stay right over here. So that I don't know if that answers the question, but that's something that's definitely helped me just have clarity and connection to my inner guy without the ego sabotaging along the way as much as it would if I
you can, right? How about you, Pervis?
So as I was listening, I was thinking about how ego for me shows up a lot with imaging. The wanting to look like you have it together. And oftentimes in the past, that has been the thing that has prohibited me from getting the healing that I needed. And so, the older I get, the older I've become, I'm just like, I don't care what I look like. I'd rather have healing, and I can look crazy to other people, but I'd rather get the healing or the wholeness that I need. So for me now, it's not like I have to check it every now and then. So if I'm going to, I'm like, let me call my therapist. Let me call my friends. Let me call my mom. You know what I mean? So, but I have to, but it'll be like, no, bro, you got it together. You got to look like you got it together. Then I'm like, nah, I'm not listening to you. I'm about to do what I need to do. The more I will always choose healing over image.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the older I've gotten, the more that I said that, like, okay, I don't want to look like I have it together. I actually would rather actually have it together than look like it. So, which is easy to do, right? Which is easy to do. And that's still a hard job in itself. But, if I'm putting all that energy into looking like it, I might as well be it, right? So for me, it's kind of like I said, I'm going to choose healing over my image.
Facts. That's beautiful. There's a question that came in from T. Samuel. Is it a sabotage, or is it showing you the weak points? Now, can you clarify that question?
Yes.
Is it sabotage, or is it showing you the weak points? Are you talking about the ego itself? So just clarify real quick. We want to get to that. But before we get to that, I wanted to just jump on this idea. And also, everybody who's in the room, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part. I see some great comments coming in. Thank you guys for saying this conversation is great dialogue. You damn right it is. Thank you, Ivo, for that. Ivo was on the panel last week, and he threw some gems down, man. We had a good time. But I want to talk about the difference between wisdom and knowledge really quick, because one of the things that we discussed the last session was really, or this whole series, is we've really been talking about the difference between ego and also the identity of your true self, or the capital S self, right? And so I've been breaking it down as such. And I not only do this with my students or my corporate clients or my whoever I'm working with, but I've been trying to really comprehend this for myself for a while, is that the ego, it's a construct of your habits that have been learned through time and experience. Now that's all in your head.
It's a building. It's building. Yeah, it's a building block.
Exactly. And so you are building this ego. You are building this character. You are building this personification, but it's actually not who you truly are. And I say that because when we discussed the three brains last week, we talked about the ego brain, or the mind, the head, the processor. FYI, if you guys missed last week, your head brain doesn't run anything, just processes information and makes sure things are like functioning the way they should. But your heart has its own brain called the intrinsic cardiac nervous system. And that is the first thing that is developed in utero. You don't even have a full heart. You just have this little tiny heart brain that's beating, and suddenly your heart grows around that, and then your body grows around your heart. And so this is who you truly are in here. And then you have your gut brain, the enteric nervous system, where it has your intuition, it has your emotions, it has that feeling of, you know what, my gut tells me that I should go left. And then you choose to go right, and you fall into debt.
That blew my mind in grad school when they told us that, your gut has as many, or if not more, neurons in the brain.
Yeah, it has more. Yeah,
more has more.
The science is catching up with the Eastern medicines like have known this for so much time, and science is catching up with it now. It's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And it actually has 90% of the serotonin you feel in release, and serotonin you need for everything, man. But with that said, the reason I wanted to bring up the difference between the ego and that true self, that inner understanding, is because a lot of times people get knowledge and wisdom confused. They say because they have knowledge, they're wise. But I want to just break down some definitions. Knowledge is to comprehend from learned or perceived information, to know and to be self-aware. That's knowledge, right? And that's like saying, I went to school, I studied this book, I had this situation with this person, right? And they treated me like shit. And I said, you know what? Don't do that anymore. That's knowledge. You gain information from a particular situation. Now, wisdom is to discern what is true/right, deep insight and comprehension. And this is the key point: comprehension for the better of all from knowledge. And wisdom is comprehending all bodies, not just the head ego brain. It's beyond the earthly concepts. This is fundamental. Now, I will repeat that, guys. Knowledge is something that you get whenever you just learn something, right? But wisdom is whenever you can apply all the things you learned and literally think about everybody. You want the well-being of everybody. The ego is not in this anymore. This is all empathy, baby. This is all we're dealing with whenever we talk about this wisdom. It's about having empathy. Now, in episode 2, we spoke about the gut brain, like I just mentioned, the enteric nervous system, and we followed the idea of intuition, right? So can you guys speak on a time when you had plenty of knowledge, right? On a said subject, but you did not follow your gut? What happened? So I love that you had knowledge on something, but instead of following that wise gut, you went over there. Give a situation. And while y'all thinking, I'm going to go to Samuel's question. Yes, ego and the changes as it readjusts. Well, Samuel, I see what you're going for here, and I see what you're saying, brother. But I think that if you sabotage based on the fact that you're not gaining like clarity, you're not gaining emotional awareness, you're not gaining empathy and care for yourself, then yeah, you're going to sabotage, because the ego is hella tricky, right? Like Jose said, the ego can make you think you're doing something right. They're spiritual egotists, FYI. So the ego can make you think you're doing something right, but really you're just creating a new type of pattern that exists within that other idea. And so which
the danger of that is that in and I don't know if he's speaking about self-sabotage, but sabotage in general, and using that language, that becomes a comforter for some people, right? In being self-sabotaging, right? That becomes comforting, because then you don't have to deal with the real you. You don't have to deal with the possibility of who you really can be. So that place of self-sabotage is always, to me, not tied to ego, but tied to our sense of worth.
And we what I mean? A life that's reactive to the world. Like we wait for the world to react, which is really I'm perceiving as the sabotage, right? Because we're not owning our power, so we're just allowing it to be, and then the world sabotages our plans. And that is kind of like going back to what you said, Pervis, the victim. We like being the victim, because when we don't plan for the sail across the sea, and we're like, I'm just gonna do as much as I feel like and I'm comfortable with. Yeah. We get there, and I think that's what he's referring to. I think I said it might sabotage the boat on the way. Then it comes, the storm takes us away, and we could blame it on the storm because we didn't decide to be in our power and prepare for the voyage.
No, and to that, you could be bigger than the ego that you created. You could be more powerful. You could be a bigger light than the ego that you created, right? And I think to the original point, the reason why ego can sometimes be our biggest enemy sometimes is because it does block who we truly are, and who we truly are is always, I would think, always bigger and more amazing than what we know ourselves to be. And so, it's my
I think someone dropped it in there, spiritual bypassing. So that's on point.
Yeah. But I also see the second part of this question, right? Is it showing you the weak points? But yes and no, right? And with that, I see Theo here. It is showing you some of the weak points of your ego, because your ego is always gonna not. It's not necessarily for your true self. It's for only itself, and it's only for the patterns that you've created. So whenever you can find these patterns, I definitely get what you're going with in that question. You can definitely find some points of weakness, because for me, like I'll say that, man, I've been focusing way too much on that right there. And I made it such a focus that it's actually starting to cause me tension, and I'm starting to get angry and frustrated from this thing. So I need to make a shift, right? But that comes with inner awareness, and that's kind of what we go back to, is knowing that we have this inner guide, this inner wisdom, so that we can check the ego, right? But let's get back to that question, right? So I wanted to know about a time where you guys had knowledge and that ego was full-fledged, right? And you had that gut intuition, and you just chose not to follow it. And what happened? Where were you? What ended up happening with that?
I'm still trying to think.
Because
I'm sure there are many. Go ahead.
I know many, right?
I actually spoke to my coach about this the other day. This is an interesting story, man. And I can see how I've done it very often. So with my partner, my fiance, we were supposed to come to Costa Rica on the 27th. We got here, we were missing some paperwork for our dog. And in order to bring her in, you need a USDA paper form. I had tasked my fiance with that. And when we got there, she missed it. So they were threatening to euthanize our dog. My ego immediately wanted to punish her for it. It was like, I want to punish her. So at that moment, I could feel like I took care of my shit. Did you take, like almost putting myself in this place of safety. And I could see many times that I've done that before, even though my inner wisdom knew that there's nothing to prove. It's okay. I could have made the same mistake, and I'm here. We're going to figure it out. And that's how I responded this time. But there's so many times before where I might have read a book and knew how to respond. I might have read Untethered Soul or Way of the Superior Man. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, when this comes up, this is how I have to show up. And then I'm actually triggered in my response. And my ego is just like, nah, I'm a punisher, or I'm gonna do this. And that's where I see it often in my partner or in relationships where I know something, we're speaking about it right now. But when that energy in my body comes up, it's much more difficult to listen to that wisdom than the ego's knowing. So that's something that recently happened to me, where I see it a lot.
Yeah, man. Thank you for that.
Mine is a relationship too, but it's a business relationship. And in my knowledge, in my ego, my gut was telling me that this person, you shouldn't do business with this person, but you should probably mentor them. And I didn't listen. And even though it was a good business relationship, it went left and it got very nasty. And everybody was like, when I was talking to people, my mentors and people, they was like, oh, you should have been mentoring. You shouldn't have done business. And I was thinking, I was like, but we had great chemistry. We worked really well. But that was the time I just didn't listen. And I think at the time I was thinking about what was available to me at the time. Instead of thinking long term, I was thinking in the short term. And I'm definitely like more inclined to wisdom than I am to knowledge any day. So like if my spirit is like, nah, that's not it. I'm more inclined to trust it more so now than ever. But yeah, that was it was like a really bad, like 6 months of hell being in partnership with that person. And we love them. That's my people to this day. But at the time, it was like that made it so loud and clear, like, Pervis, you need to listen to your gut. You need to go with your gut.
Just to add to that, I think that's why the importance of giving yourself time to sit with those thoughts and those emotions and letting yourself process them. Because I know sometimes I'm excited, like I'm listening to your story and I'm thinking about other situations where that happened. And I'm like, I'm excited, and that's really just my ego wants to jump in and like afraid to lose the opportunity, or afraid to like and just allow me to sit. Yeah, exactly. And then you just sit with yourself and you're like, man, this would be cool. It'd be fun. I think there's something that could come out of it, but something in me just knows And that's a hard decision to make. Like, I know for myself, sometimes when I sit with myself, I'm like, damn, but I really want this. And I have to almost be disciplined. It makes me think of the importance of setting standards, values, and just knowing who you are. And even like journaling, writing it out, because sometimes you'll be tested and you have to say no to things that give you either instant gratification or seem exciting at that moment. And really it's from the knowledge and the story of the ego. And remind yourself that every no is a yes to your soul, to your true self. Like, I know this isn't where I should be, even if it excites me. And I think one example that comes to mind that I always use as a reference for men is sex. You know, like, they're at that moment, like, yes, it's a new experience. Let's do it. And then you sit with it. You're like, well, you know, is this really in alignment with my true self? Does my true self actually
you have a lot of cognitive dissonance afterwards, right? You have a lot of cognitive dissonance, a lot of buyer's remorse.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like that Christmas present. Just open up, you're like, and once it's open, you're like, shit, that's it. It's over. Next Christmas.
True. Yeah. That's 100% fact, man. And so I'm loving what you guys are saying, because in that question, you actually addressed the thing that I wanted to ask next, which is understanding how to combine the wisdom that you've had from previous experiences or from that inner self, and then actually just, making a different decision, because that's our past is just there to reflect from. You know, it's not there to ponder over and to, you know, to harp on and to make, you know, the story you tell is going to be the one that you see every day, even though you don't really see it in your face the way you tell it. It's going to show up somehow. And that was the thing that helped me the most, is I had to start listening to the stories I told about my past. I was like, yo, you're really holding on to this past shit. So I'm like, you really ain't trying to let it go. And so I wanted to.
Can I ask something right there, though, quickly to what you just said? So one of the things I pray for is I pray to like lose that memory recall, right? Because I think I always want to know what I've experienced, but I don't want to know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to know the colors, the smell. Like, I don't want to know that, because you know, that's helped me to be an amazing coach, right? That's helped me tremendously.
Yeah.
But at this point in my life, it's like I don't want to have that recall, because I don't want that narrative. That's something that I experience. And I think sometimes when you live in it so much, it becomes your identity. And so like in that, I want to make sure that I'm very clear. That's something that happened to me. That is not who I am. And that's something over there. But I remember the tools and the things I've gleaned the lessons from it and the wisdom from it. But definitely I'm with you. Like I definitely am in a space where I just don't want to have that memory recall like that.
You know, Pervis, you just inspired something. For me, in what you just said, the wisdom is really embodiment. Like, you don't need the details. There's just like this inner knowing of what happened, what you learned from it. You allow yourself to embody it, which allows you to show up in your power and in truth without having to speak it, without having to like share the story and all the details for yourself or for others to give you that attention. It's almost just like this inner knowing of who you are and an embodiment. And I love how you use that example about not knowing.
One of the things that my English teacher is my favorite teacher ever. She said, every time you open up a story, the characters become alive. So you can read A Tale of Two Cities that was written 400 years ago, but when you read it, those characters are alive. And it's the same thing with our stories, with our past. Like if I'm opening up that story of my past, it becomes alive for me. And so to your point, I want to know the wisdom of it, but I don't need to know the intricacies of it anymore. Exactly.
Now, Ackerson, is that Erickson? I want to say it's Erickson, but maybe Erickson. Is there ever a situation where the ego should be listened to? Yes, when Absolutely. You are in danger. So, for instance, your ego is not a bad thing. This is where people kind of like they've been playing on this ego and toxic masculinity and all this stuff, right? But the ego is actually your friend if you choose it to be, and if you like literally build up a healthy ego. The ego is a construct in your mind, but it's really based on the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight. It is literally there to keep you safe. Like your ego will keep you out of danger. You hear some shit pop off, you hear gunfire, you see some noise, you see shit. That's your ego. It's like, I'm in danger. Get out of here. Let's go. And so even in times where you feel like let's say you want to do something that you literally will know that will put you in a position to create a goal. Yeah, that's ego stuff, man. Like just be like, yo, my ego wants me to go ahead and get to work today. And so
and be paid your worth. And be paid your worth. Like that's ego too. Like I'm not coming to speak at your event for free when you just paid such and such $5,000. That's not happening. That's ego, right? That's protecting yourself.
Desire. Yeah, which is also, when you said shots are popping off, and you're like, oh fuck, let me get out of here. That's because there's stories in there of, well, what happens when shots are being popped off and I might lose my life, and immediately you replay those stories. But on the other hand, to go with what Pervis said, there's also stories there that help us have this conversation and bring these different identities and layers and contexts that only we can uniquely bring because our ego collected those stories. Like I know that I could come here and talk about stuff popping off because I've been in the hood and I've seen stuff pop off, and that brings this element of story where I can come into the space and talk about that. And that's something to appreciate, like, oh, well, that is my story, but I don't retell it with the fear. I just embody, and it's just part of who I am. The tattoos, the conversation, the culture, and the way I get paid as well. Pervis, I love that. It's like I just got this because of these stories I've done, these accomplishments I created.
That's when you definitely need the ego. Money is involved.
Absolutely. Facts. And so for all of you out there, this is why it's important to follow your inner guide, right? It's because it's giving you the perception of understanding the full scenario, the full gamut. Now, I wanted to just bring something up really quick. This is for all of you out there. Why is it important to follow your inner guide? I'm going to give you a little list, and I want you to leave your comments. And you should ask yourself this, right? So the inner guide, for one, let me just preference, it does not actually reside in time and space. It is not something that is based off the past, future, or any of this. It is felt and not, well, let me rephrase. It is felt and heard from a divine space and not your head or your ears, right? That's ego stuff. It will always guide you to the right place. Literally, it will always guide you to the right place. It allows you to trust yourself more, which is really huge. It builds a connection with the source of creation, and it builds a deeper relationship with your true self. So these are the things that are going to be foundations and pillars. Now, I want to know for all of you out there, what are your foundations? What are your pillars? And have you had this experience? Really quickly before we actually jump off, because we got about 7 more minutes and we have one more question. But I actually think that this question and some of the comments in here, Cynthia said that, are you going to cover balancing the chakras? This helps to keep the ego out of your journey. Now, yes, Cynthia, I agree with you for sure. But that is a whole session in itself. And next week, I'm actually planning on doing some stuff with geometry and chakras. But just really quick, that root chakra, that creative sacral chakra, and that solar plexus ego chakra, that's ego body. Those are your ego bodies. But once you get into the heart, ain't no more ego there. Ain't no more ego. So if you can learn how to navigate your chakras, yes, you can definitely bypass the ego, but that does not mean you will heal. That's the trick of people getting too caught up in spirituality, right? They think that like, oh, let me just tune my chakras and not deal with the issue. No, whenever you tune the chakra, the issue comes up, the emotion comes up, the feeling comes back down. Yeah. And like Pervis said, you got to purge, you got to cry, you got to get those chemicals out. You got to transmute that energy. You got to transmute those chemicals by releasing them, not by ignoring or just like saying, no, I'm just going to tune the chakras and not pay attention to it. And so with that said, I just wanted to lean on this last thing I wanted you guys to just share with the group. What advice would you guys give the audience to assist them in possibly finding their own inner guide? And don't get me wrong, this whole conversation has been that. But before we leave, because we got about 5 minutes left, what would you guys say to people who are trying to answer these things?
Go ahead.
You gonna go or I go?
No, go ahead, brother.
Okay. So I'm putting on my coaching hat for 1 second. One of the things I always I had to, bro. I've like been fighting the whole time. One of the things I always share with people is that no one is born ill-equipped; they're just born ill-informed, right? And so, with that being said, that gives you agency and that leaves you empowered. You never want to. I don't believe that we're created to be left in a victimized state. We're created to be empowered, right? Hence, how we have creativity, we have agency. We can build, we can claim, we can fight, we can create things, all those things, right? And so with that being said, I think for anybody out there who wants to get in tune with themselves, sit with yourself, right? Don't be afraid of what comes up. Never look at yourself from a place of judgment or shame. Look at it from a place of curiosity and something to work on or something to explore. I think that's the most important thing. Like and then also you have to be anchored in what do you know to be true. In order to have, to trust your gut and things like that, you have to be anchored in what do you know to be true about yourself. So that's like, what are the 5 things that you know about you that are positive, that no matter what happens in life, those things are constant. And so like, I think in this journey of healing and wholeness and all the stuff that we're all talking about, you have to know who you are foundationally. And that's where you build. And once you come to that place of knowing who you are and that you have that foundation, all the other stuff is like, I don't want to say easier, but it's
more digestible.
It's more digestible, right? And so like, if I know that I'm amazing, but I have some issues, it helps me to deal with the issues better because I know I'm amazing. You know what I mean? So it's like, that. So like, you always want to leave. So you always want to be left in a place of empowerment, not victimization.
Hell yeah. How about you?
Man, I don't know what to add to that. That was knowing your truth, knowing who you are, and just ditto to everything you said, brother. One thing that I'll just add by sharing something that helps me gain access to what you just shared. Sometimes it's harder to know who you are than it is to know who you're not, right? So one thing that has really helped me is like, well, who is it that I'm not? And that allows me to remove everything that isn't out of the way, and then get more curious with more a narrow lens. And then I top that off by asking myself, well, what are let's say, minimum 3 things that, if taken away from Jose, will no longer make me Jose, right? And that really helps me like step into, and it's really simple things, not details about tangible things in life. It's just my self-expression. When I was a kid, I wasn't really allowed to express myself, and my throat chakra, speaking about chakras, was really like, this is where I feel it right here. There's just like, and I know if I can't express myself, I'm no longer Jose, right? And that just allows me to step into any situation to be like, well, I'm not allowed to express myself, or there's something here that's not allowing me to express myself. Let me explore that, going back to what Pervis said. So those are 2 tools that really help. And one last thing I want to add is breath work. When it comes to like that stored energy, since we spoke about the nervous system, we tend to store, I know I've processed things, but then realized that they're still stored in my body. And it just ends up sabotaging me, coming back to sabotage later on. Breath work has helped me tremendously, and really just letting go. When you look at wild animals, whenever they go through something traumatic, and I think you shared this, Omar, in that event that I mentioned in person, they shake it off and then they move forward. They remove it from their body. And breath work has allowed me to do that. So it's like removing that energy or that trauma from the somatic system. That is something that you're craving. That's definitely a tool I would look into as well.
Word. And Cynthia, we will not have time to get to that question, but as far as the Kundalini awakening, I think that everyone has their own experience, but it's definitely a real experience. I've definitely went down that road and had my Kundalini rise in my body. And to be honest, once it got past my heart, I got scared because I literally did not want to untether from the idea of human experience. And so we get into these, spiritual, esoteric things, but we have to remember that we are really here to be human. We're really here to understand how to transition the human's DNA. It's not necessarily how to, like, I've left my body, I've astral projected, I've created miracles, I've talked to angels and all those people, whatever. It doesn't mean anything right now. The only thing that matters right now is that I'm showing love fully and presently. And so all these techniques, there's a million techniques, there's infinite techniques in the universe, because everything is made from atoms, right? Everything is made from this idea of atoms and the intelligence system that makes up the whole universe. So you can create anything. You can do Kundalini up, down, all around. You can clear the chakras. You can clear the energy body. You can do all that fun stuff. But at the end of the day, the reason that we're here today is to share and spread love and get our DNA back to its original blueprint, which is divine purpose. And so, with that said, I thank you, brothers, tremendously. It is so good to not only be on this talk with you guys, but to have the interaction with the group. I see that some people got some real good stuff out of this, some new realizations, as Ryan was saying. And Cynthia, that was a great question. I wish I had time to go into that more, because we can get caught up a lot in some of these ideas. But I just want all of you to take from this particular talk is the simple act of what can I do to love myself more by following my inner wisdom? And then how do I share that with my human beings, right? Nothing more that we're here to do right now. Yeah, we're here to make money and do our goals and, do all this capitalism bullshit. But at the end of the day, I'll just be honest. I don't know if you guys saw this post I put up earlier today. It said free, right? And then it had healthcare. It had food, being fed, all this healthy stuff. But it had the lion in a cage, right? Protected, free. But freedom is the lion roaming out in the jungle. And let's just be real. We're animals. We are actually not supposed to be living in this construct of division, separation, and material possessions. Like, it's not real. It's made up. It's an idea. Somebody gave it to us and we're like, ooh, I accept it. And so understand that today, if we can leave with anything, it's inner wisdom of loving yourself. With that said, I want to give you two look like we got our man in the back already doing it, but I'm gonna go ahead and let Pervis go first. Go ahead and tell people where you at, what you do, and how to reach you.
You can follow me, everybody. I'm Pervis again. I am an award-winning celebrity life coach, author of the book Survival Mode. It's a book that teaches men of color how to process and navigate through their emotions and mental health. Check that out. You can follow me on Instagram at Pervis Taylor.
Jose?
Beautiful, brother. Jose Alejandro, really my mission is to inspire men to own their truth unapologetically and create lives of integrity, impact, and intention. And I help leaders in the men's well-being space amplify their impact with intention and integrity. And I also run Modern Renaissance Man, which is a men's group for the modern man who's interested in being more conscious and connected leader in both life and in business. And you can follow me on Instagram at @Jose_Alejandro. And if you're on Clubhouse,
I'm on Clubhouse too.
Yes, follow me at Jose Alejandro 1, having some really powerful conversations there. And tomorrow I'll be hosting one on masculinity as well. So appreciate and I'm humbled for being on this platform and having this conversation.
Well, thank you very much for that, guys. And I'm not on Clubhouse, mostly because I don't have an iPhone or iPad. So everybody's like, you need to go get an iPad so you can join Clubhouse. But with that said, I do have a brother, Manny Almonte, and we're going to give a big shout out to him like we always do. He is behind the scenes doing all this fun stuff.
Shout out to Manny.
He's on Clubhouse. You can follow him at @1MannyC. No, I'm sorry. He's always it's a little catchphrase. It's actually one man NYC, but in there it's his actual name. He's clever. So you can follow him on Clubhouse, Mastermind Connect group, and all the things that we're going to be pertaining to men's wellness, community, and brotherhood. And this message today is brought to you by Mastermind Connect. This is the brotherhood that we are building this with. If you guys do not know about Mastermind Connect, you can go to mastermindconnect.com. We are a men's group that is based on like the best things you can be based on, right? Resources, reciprocity, and respect. And we literally do that with each other. We do everything with each other under those guidelines. And so if you want to be a part of the group, by all means, check us out. Once again, mastermindconnect.com. This was a Holy Men presentation. Thank you for being a part. We're going to have our next series next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to get into sacred geometry, and we're going to talk about some of those deep spiritual things that we actually, we kind of sometimes skip over when it comes to the fundamentals of spirituality. Now, with that said, once again, my brothers, thank you very much. It is great to have you on. For all of you out there, thank you for your comments. Thank you for your time.